In 2012, a retired nurse walked into a room full of strangers and told a scientist something that should have been impossible. She said she could smell Parkinson's disease. Not metaphorically, not vaguely, she meant she could detect a specific odour on skin that no machine, no test, no doctor had ever used to identify the condition. The scientists nearly dismissed her. He didn't. And what happened next changed neurology. Joy Milne grew up in Perth, Scotland, with what she described as a superpower she never asked for. From childhood, she could detect smells other people simply couldn't. Not just stronger, but differently. More information, more texture. She became a nurse, which suited her. Hospitals have a language of their own, and Joy could read it. In the late 1970s, Joy's husband Les, an anaesthetist, began to change. It was subtle at first. Mood, energy, a slight stiffness in how he moved. But what Joy noticed before any of that, what she noticed before Les noticed, was a smell. Not unpleasant exactly. Musky, slightly sweet, like old flowers. Or paper left too long in the sun. It clung to the back of his neck, to his skin. She mentioned it to him. He shrugged it off. She let it go. 12 years passed. In 1987, Les Milne was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He was 45 years old. After Les's diagnosis, Joy threw herself into the Parkinson's community. Support groups, fundraising, research events. She wanted to understand what was happening to her husband. At one of these meetings, she walked into a room full of people with Parkinson's disease and stopped. The smell, his smell, it was everywhere. Not one person, not two. Every single Parkinson's patient in the room carried a version of the same musky, sweet odour she had first noticed on Les more than a decade earlier. Joy raised it with the doctors at the meeting. They were polite, unconvinced. Smell wasn't a diagnostic marker. There was no literature on it. It didn't fit the model. But Joy was a nurse. She knew what she'd observed. She kept asking. Eventually, in 2012, she found herself at a Parkinson's UK research event in Edinburgh. She spoke to a scientist named Thilo Kunath. Kunath was a neurobiologist at the University of Edinburgh. He studied how Parkinson's develops at a cellular level, specifically a protein called alpha-synuclein that misfolds and aggregates in the brain of Parkinson's patients. He listened to Joy, and unlike the others, he didn't dismiss her. He said, "Let's test it." The test was deliberately simple, almost brutally so. 12 t-shirts, 6 worn overnight by people with Parkinson's disease, 6 worn by people without it. All sealed, all unlabelled. Joy didn't know which was which. She went through them one by one. 11 out of 12 correctly identified. The researchers were stunned. That's not a lucky guess. The statistical probability of getting 11 out of 12 by chance is less than 1%. But here's the part that takes a moment to fully land. The t-shirt Joy got wrong, the one she labelled as Parkinson's when the wearer had no diagnosis. That person was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 8 months later. She hadn't made a mistake. She had detected Parkinson's before the doctors did. 12 out of 12. After the t-shirt trial, a research team led by Dr. Perdita Baran at the University of Manchester got involved. Using a technique called mass spectrometry, which can identify individual molecules in a substance, they analysed the sebum of Parkinson's patients. Sebum is the natural oil your skin produces. It coats your hair follicles, protects your skin. And apparently, in Parkinson's patients, it smells different. The team identified specific compounds that appear in elevated levels in people with Parkinson's, including hippuric acid, icosane, and octadecenol. Chemical names that matter because they are measurable. They are real, they are detectable. What Joy's nose had been picking up for 30 years, science could now isolate in a lab. Their findings were published in 2019 in the Journal of American Chemical Society. The conclusion? A skin swab test, quick, non-invasive, cheap, could potentially detect Parkinson's disease before motor symptoms begin. That matters enormously, because by the time a patient is diagnosed with Parkinson's using current methods, they've already lost somewhere between 50 and 80% of their dopamine-producing neurons. The damage is done before the diagnosis exists. Les Milne died in June 2015. Joy was with him. Before he died, he made her promise to keep working with the researchers to keep pushing. She has. She still does. Since the original study, teams across the world have been attempting to build this into a clinical test, something a GP could administer, something scalable, something that could catch a Parkinson's at stage 0, before the tremor, before the stiffness, before the fall. It hasn't reached routine clinical use yet. That takes time. That takes trials. But the science is real. The biomarkers are real. And it started with one woman in Perth, Scotland, telling her husband he smelled different and refusing to be told that didn't matter. So, fact or fiction? The claim a nurse could smell Parkinson's disease before doctors could diagnose it? Fact. Completely, verifiably, peer-reviewed fact. Joy Milne's sensitivity is extraordinary, yes, but the underlying mechanism that Parkinson's disease alters the composition of a person's sebum in detectable ways is now established science. The myths we think are too strange to be true often turn out to be the ones that change everything. If you found this interesting, why not subscribe for any of our upcoming videos? And I'll see you in the next one.